as I tell my kids and my grandkids, if you want to be successful, basically you work harder, longer, and smarter than the other guys. And any two of the three don't work. You have to do them all.
Welcome, high-performing entrepreneurs and business owners. Do you suffer from shiny object syndrome? Do you often feel scattered and distracted, making it hard to implement your plan with all the ideas and strategies coming at you? Do you often wonder if you have the right goals and plan? Welcome to Extraordinary Focus with David Wood, where we help you achieve way more in less time. Get the laser focus you need so you can double your business, double your impact in the world, and be an even more extraordinary entrepreneur and human. Let's dive in and stay tuned at the end for your gift. Welcome to another episode of Extraordinary Focus with David Wood. I am excited about today's guest. Tebo took himself from a shoe-shining business at age 8 to a real estate business that boasts over 4 million square feet of real estate. Can you believe that? And a larger vintage car collection than Jay Leno. When I mention his name here in Boulder, people say, oh, he owns half a Boulder, which is fun. He's also my landlord. And I'm very excited that he's agreed to come on the podcast. Let's find out how he amassed such wealth and how we can do it too. Let's get him out here. Tebo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invitation.
I feel grateful. My story about you is that you are super busy with a lot of people wanting your time. Is that accurate, or am I totally off base with that?
That's not only accurate, it's probably conservative.
Conservative. All right. So what's a typical day look like for you?
I'm usually up and at the office, before 8 o'clock, and work usually through 6 or better, and have meeting after meeting. And as most of us do, we are a pawn to our emails and to our telephone. And I'm much more in line with the telephone because I can pick up the phone and normally in 1 to 2 minutes resolve something that would take 4 or 5 emails to do. So I actually don't get emails myself directly. My assistant gets emails, and I respond to her and she responds to them. So I found that is more effective for me because I'll go through emails and forget to respond to several, and I try to be very, very astute in returning all of my emails, all of my calls. I think that's a courtesy type thing that I learned growing up in Kansas.
Okay, so I got 2 tips out of that. One is have an assistant to handle your emails, and 2, use phone when you can. Use phone because you'll get something done probably quicker than you can with 5 or 6 emails going back and forth.
Yeah, well, it's so much more effective because you can ask the proper questions and get instantaneous 10, 15-second feedback instead of another complete email. Then we'll end in a question that you then have to respond to.
Yeah. Where did you come from and how did you get here?
Came from a little town in Kansas, northwest Kansas, called Hill City, Kansas. I went to school in Hays, Kansas, which is again in northwest Kansas, university out there, about 5,000 students. And I got my bachelor's degree in mathematics out there and was given a graduate assistantship to go to the Missouri School of Mines to get a master's degree, which I wound up getting in 1968 in computer science. I had put myself through college in Hays buying and selling coins and was reasonably successful doing that, and decided that's what I probably wanted to do as a vocation, at which time when I did graduate with a master's degree in computer science, by the way, we were the first class ever in the United States of America to graduate with a master's degree in computer science. Again, that was 1968 when the computer was about the size of the house that you're now living in.
How does one be successful at buying and selling coins? I mean, how do you get ahead of all the other people who are buying and selling coins?
Well, luckily it didn't take much for me to make money, and had a very, very meek lifestyle. I would buy and sell coins. Started out in the evenings and at coin club meetings, and then at conventions on the weekends, I would go to the big town of Salina, Kansas, or Colby, Kansas, or something, where they would have a coin show and buy and sell coins, and maybe I would make $5 or $10 or $20, and I only had to do that a couple of times a day to earn my living.
And so you had coins, you were making some money in coins, enough to get by. You went and did the masters, which you didn't really want to do, but you figured it'd be your ticket out. And then what happened?
When I was graduating, everybody was getting these incredible interviews, and from everything from IBM to General Motors to Chrysler Corporation and everything, because we were the pick of the litter, basically, of the graduating classes in the United States. So we could go any place we wanted and were offered reasonable salaries. But again, I was part-time that I'd been doing it as a coin dealer was making as much money as the college professors were at that time. And so I wanted to continue in it because it's something I absolutely loved. And they say if you do something you love every day, you never actually go to work. So I love the coins, very, very challenging. And I'd read something about Boulder, Colorado in Forbes magazine being one of the amazing places to run a business and to raise a family. And so literally the day I graduated, unloaded everything in a U-Haul and drove into Boulder.
All right. So we came from, and you mentioned this in the pre-interview, you mentioned shining shoes. So we came from shining shoes to coins to doing a master's and then packing everything into a U-Haul and coming to Boulder. How is it that you now have, I think I read in the bio, over 4 million square feet of real estate to your name? How do you get from a U-Haul to that?
Well, when I came into town, I pulled into the first building that I saw, which was Hudson Homes at the time, and went in and said, okay, I would like to buy a house. And the guy, of course, looks at me, and I'm in my early 20 years old and didn't want to spend a lot of time with me because thought that I probably could not buy a house. And her question was, what part of Boulder? And I said, I've never been to Boulder before, I don't know. And she said, well, what's your timing? And I said, well, see that U-Haul truck out there? She says, yeah. I said, I need to unload it, and I'd like to unload it in the house I would like to buy. And I had $5,000 to put down on the house. And the house at that time was in Table Mesa, being built by Hudson Homes, and it was $18,500. So she put a contract together on it. I put my $5,000 down and went to a broker to borrow the $13,500. And he said, basically after a few days, that he couldn't get me a loan because I didn't have a job. And I showed him my tax forms and everything, that I'd been making pretty good money and that I could easily qualify for a job. And he said, well, it doesn't really matter because you're in business for yourself and you don't have a guaranteed income. The only person I knew at that time in Boulder was a professor at the university called Larry Steinmetz. And I called him that night and said, I don't know what to do. I'm sitting here in a hotel room waiting for them to approve my loan, and they won't approve my loan because I don't have a job. And he said, well, can you teach business statistics? And I said, if it's math, I can teach it. And he says, well, let me call you in the morning. So he called me the next morning and said, we have an opening in the business department for a business statistics teacher. And if you want the job, it pays $115 a month. So next call was to my mortgage broker and said, if I had a job with the university paying me $115 a month, can I qualify for this loan? And he calls me back a couple hours later and he says, yeah, if you can prove you have a job for $115, your payment's only $95, we'll approve you for the loan and you can buy the house. So I taught business statistics at the University of Colorado for a year at $115 a month to pay for my house.
Wow. I want to unpack that a little bit. That feels very important to me. So you found a house that you wanted, you put down the deposit, you couldn't get a loan because of your work situation. And I just turned on the fan on my computer. It's a little hot today. You could not get a loan, so you called a friend. You didn't just white knuckle it. You didn't just, be a lone ranger. You're like, hey, what do I do? And the second thing I'm getting is that the main thing in the way is you didn't have a job, and the friend's like, well, how about I just give you a job? And you took it. You went and took a job rather than complaining and agonizing about the bank. You did what it took to get this done.
Yep, and felt very, very lucky to do that. And what was interesting is I'd never taken the course in college, so every night before I would teach a class, I would go downstairs in my basement and read the chapter and learn everything I needed to know to teach the next day.
Yeah, I love that too. So you're learning as you go. It's what I think I'm getting about you is you don't need to see all the steps. You don't need to be super confident about what you're doing. You're willing to learn as you go. Does that sound right?
As they say, you do what it takes. Failure is not an option, as they
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, I this resonates for me because when I started coaching, I didn't really know how it worked formally with a client. So I hired a coach and I do my first session with him, learn what happened, and then I'd practice that on my practice client. And then the second session, I'd see what he did, and then I'd go and do that as well. So I really like hearing that story. And then, so that was your first real estate deal, right? $5,000 down on an $18,500 house. I think you have more real estate now. How did that come about?
I then, when I got moved into the house, I had my coins and everything in boxes, and I went downtown and found a space, 1136 Spruce, to rent, a little over 700 square feet, and to open up my coin shop, a retail coin shop. I did have a retail shop in Hays, Kansas that I closed for that 1 year, as I mentioned. And so rented a space down there, and that was 1968. In 1972, I had totally run out of room, and I was looking for another space to rent and found nothing that I thought was really appropriate, because in the meantime, I had taken on a distributorship for a brand of showcases out of Madison, Wisconsin called Berg Showcase, and was their distributor for several states. The way that happened was I knew I wanted a particular type of showcase in my coin shop, which included those revolving showcases. They call it like the carousel that revolves around, kind of like a Ferris wheel, and called the manufacturer in Madison, Wisconsin, and told them I needed these 8 or 10 showcases for my coin shop. And they said, well, we're sorry, we don't have a rep in your area. We don't have anybody covers that. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, because there's no people out there in the middle of the United States. All of our people are on the East Coast to the West Coast, and that's where we have all of our distributors. And so thinking to myself, well, if they don't have a distributor, maybe I could distribute it, therefore being able to buy the showcases at wholesale. So I called the sales manager of the company and suggested that he make me a distributor for Colorado for that type of showcase. And I'm sure his thought process was, I have absolutely nothing to lose because there are no people there, and we don't have any representation out there right now, so there's no downside to them. So I ordered my showcases to put on the coin shop, and in 1971, the same sales manager called me and he said, well, you're doing fairly well with the showcases. Would you like to come back to the sales meeting in Madison? I said, no, not really. I said, we're too busy for that. I just don't have time. And he says, well, we would pay you all your expenses and everything if you'd come back. And I said, well, why would you do that? And he said, well, you're the largest volume distributor we have in the United States, and we're trying to figure out how you do it out there with no people.
Wow. All right. You heard it here, listeners. If you can't find the job you want, create your own job. Stephen called up and he said, hey, I think you should make me your distributor for Colorado. He didn't just apply to an ad, respond to an ad. He created his own job and then was so good at it that they wanted to learn from him.
So to fast forward that, you said, how did I get into the real estate? I had to give you a little bit of that background to know that then in 72, I had run out of room and I'm looking for a place and nothing seems to be really appropriate because I need not only for my coin shop, I need a showroom and a little warehouse for my showcases. So I bought a lot on 28th Street, which is right now close to 28th and Valmont. And it was a 50,000 square foot lot. And I paid $60,000 for it. And that, again, 1972, I had to annex it to the city because Valmont and 28th was not in the city in 1972. So I annexed to the city, went to my banker, and by then I had established pretty good credit with my banker and said, I bought this lot, I paid cash for this lot. I would like to give it to you as collateral and borrow enough to build a building for my coin shop and my store fixture business. I need 4,000 square feet. And the banker looked at it and he says, well, that's a large lot. Why don't you build a larger building? Because I don't need it. He said, well, we'll loan you the money to build a 10,000 square foot building and rent the rest of it out. And I said, well, okay, if you loan me the money. So they loaned me $280,000. I built a 10,000 square foot building, moved myself into 4,000 and rented out the other 6,000. And that was the start of the Tebo properties.
Wow. So what I think I'm getting from this is you didn't wake up one morning with, Moses didn't come from the mountain and hand you some tablets saying, this is what you're going to do with your future. You just needed a solution to a problem. And instead of renting the property, you decided, hey, I'm going to go and buy something, I'm going to build something, and then it just emerged out of that. Wait a minute, I could be cost effective to do a bigger building and start renting it out. And I'm assuming that initial renting went quite well and the numbers were such that you were inspired to keep going.
Yeah, because within 2 years, the balance of the tenants in that building were paying 100% of the cost of the building.
Wow, 2 years cash flow neutral.
Being pretty good at mathematics, I thought, I can make this work. And then
Wow.
something needed to expand. And so I went down the street several years later and bought another building to expand those people into. And that was my second building. That was probably about 1976 or 78. And so that was the start of it, and decided I liked that. And it was something that I could literally do part-time, because I could own the building and manage it along with the coin business and the store fixture business.
Wow. So now you own over 250 properties, over 4 million square feet of real estate. I want to ask, before we get to the cars, I really want to get to the cars, but before we get to the cars, I want to ask, if you were to leave one or two nuggets of wisdom for people who wanted to be more successful in business, what would they be? Is there something that you got on your mind that you're like, you know what, you should focus on X?
Well, focus on, obviously, as I mentioned, something that you absolutely love. That has a lot to do with it. And a couple other, I think, pertinent parts of that are you've got to be willing to reinvest your time and probably reinvest your money for something better in the future. And I was willing to do that, and I was able to live on the coin business and the store fixture business for many, many years. So from 1972 to when I finally sold the store fixture business in 2001, I never took $1 out of my real estate. I continued to reinvest and reinvest and reinvest both the money and my time in that. And so many people are not willing to accept deferred compensation. They want to get compensation today. I want my check, I want to spend it, I want to then work next week, get my check and spend it. And I live substantially less than what I was making and reinvested. And as I tell my kids and my grandkids, if you want to be successful, basically you work harder, longer, and smarter than the other guys. And any two of the three don't work. You have to do them all.
You heard it here, listeners. Reinvest your time. Never take money out of your investment, relish deferred compensation, put your time and your money back into your life, and work harder, longer, and smarter than everybody else if accumulating wealth and success is your goal. I love that. Now, let's talk about cars. When I came to look at this house, and I think I'm now living in what was once your family home. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So when I came here, I found something unusual in the garage. I think I counted 7 vintage cars, beautifully restored. And two of them were even up on a hoist. So like these cars were crammed in here. And I don't know cars. I don't normally see cars like this, but I was moved. Like one looked like a restored Rolls, a vintage Rolls. And I said to a friend of mine, I feel like I'm in a museum. And he said, you are.
Yeah.
I couldn't even estimate, like I couldn't tell if these cars were worth like 50,000 or $1 million. On average, if you were to spot a vintage car on the street that's beautifully restored, what's the average value of a car like that?
Well, 50 might be a good one. There's some that are look that would be valuable that maybe only worth 10 or 20,000.
Yeah.
But you can also look at one that's a one-off or a special year or a special body style that could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay, all right. So I could get something that looked pretty fancy, might not be that valuable for maybe 10 or 20. But then when you kindly offered that I could use some of your furniture, I went on a furniture hunt around Boulder. I didn't realize your furniture was spread through about 1,000 storage lockers. So that was a treasure hunt. But one of the warehouses happened to have some extra stuff in it. And I couldn't count the cars in your collection. How many cars do you have right now in your vintage car collection?
You're talking about the one in Longmont?
Yeah.
Yeah. I put it, or simply I have 30 dozen.
Yeah, because I knew there wasn't 30 dozen. My guess was about 150, just looking at the rows and rows and rows. So that was fun for me because I'm not used to seeing one vintage car, and to see 30 dozen in one spot was a real treat. Why cars? Out of all the places you could invest and put your money, why cars and why so many?
I've always loved cars. I couldn't afford a car when I was in high school, so now I'm at the point where I can, and I love them. They have a lot of intrigue. They have a lot of history, and the designs are just amazing. If you start from back when my earliest cars in 1909, and you start looking through the designs and the improvements that they've made since then. I'm a collector at heart. I started out with coins, collecting coins. When I sold the coin business, I started collecting art. And when I filled all my walls with art, I started collecting cars. And my bankers now say that I collect buildings. So,
right, you are a collector.
I'm a collector at heart.
And would you say the vintage car business, I'm assuming it's paid off emotionally and it feels really good to do it. Financially, would you say it's been a good business to be in, or not as much as the real estate?
No, not if you consider the cost of maintaining them. The cost of maintaining them is astronomical.
Right.
Just the building that they're in is very, very expensive, but they have gone up in value. And when I buy a car, one of my bottom lines is it a good investment? Because obviously I have quite a few dollars invested in that, and would like to have some sort of a return.
Well, Stephen, you've dropped so many value bombs here. I've got a whole bunch of notes. It was really useful for me, hopefully for our listeners as well. Is there anything you didn't get a chance to say that you'd like to say before we wrap up this interview?
Well, I'd just like to say that it's imperative that you give back to the community. I think a lot of people forget about that part of it. And we've been lucky enough, the community's been incredibly generous to us and supported all of our businesses and all of the tenants that rent from us. And it's just inherent that you give back to the community. You can't continue to take water from the well without replenishing it. And so we've been lucky enough to be able to do that in several different venues. So we're very proud of that.
And where my financial brain goes straight away is I'm assuming it feels good to give back to the community. And financially, do you think it's also in a business's self-interest to give back? Like, does that actually pay off?
Only in PR. You're never going to get dollars back for what it is, but again, it's just inherent that that's, to me, one of the requirements. Again, the community gives to you, you need to give back to it. What goes around comes around is absolutely good comment on that.
All right, so karma is real, and if you're getting good stuff in life, give a little as well, so that there's a circle happening. I love it. Stephen Tebo, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to Extraordinary Focus with David Wood. Now, to achieve way more in less time, to double your business and your impact in the world, and to be an even more extraordinary entrepreneur and human, make sure you get your gift basket. It includes a cheat sheet to double your focus, a short video to implement the steps, and a free focus audit to identify the #1 focus leak in your business and how to plug it. To get all 3 of these goodies, just go to myfocusgift.com. If you've gotten value out of this episode, tell your friends. And nothing says keep up the good work, David, like a review, which helps us climb in the rankings and reach more listeners. Now, let's be extraordinary.